right, welcome back to the RIFF. Today I'm here with Ms. Linda Owens. She is the Projects Director of the Madison Valley Ranchlands Group. And if you have not had the pleasure of meeting, talking with, or knowing Linda, then you are definitely missing out because she's one of my favorite people in this valley. And with that, I'll introduce Linda. Hey, Linda.
Hi, Keith.
So today we're going to talk about ranching. Tell me something. I know that your job with the Ranchlands Group is pretty demanding. And I just wanted to first ask you, how do you balance the demand of running a ranch while also contributing to our local community? Because I know you do both.
Okay, well, the Ranchlands Group is a job. And my board is very flexible on letting me do my other work, which includes having my own small cow herd that I have on leased ground with Julie Funston, who is at McAllister. So I still have my finger in the agricultural pie, along with having my custom haying business where I hay during the summer. And so it makes it so that I can be a projects director for them. And it's all my passion. Sometimes I short one to do the other, but I think it's a lot of give and take on both.
Yeah, tell me, talk about that passion. What inspired you to get into ranching? I mean, this is a family thing for you, right? Is it generational?
I grew up on the family ranch there at McAllister. My grandpa came in and bought that ranch. And then my dad, when he got out of the service, he was an electrical engineer. And then when my grandpa had his heart attacks, then my dad came back and bought the ranch. And then he's added to it a couple times, which was unusual in the 70s to be able to add to a ranch around here. There was high interest rates, and just most of them they were not expanding even back then. The local small ranches weren't expanding. My dad's was it was a subsistence ranch is what we called it, because it all went back into the ranch. You never had a new car. You never had new clothes.
Everything went back into the ranch.
Mm-hmm. And my mom and dad both worked full-time on the ranch. My mom didn't have a town job, which was very unusual and still is, that there isn't one other couple that's in ranching having a town job to help support the livelihood, the ranch.
Yeah, interesting. How does that affect you today as a grown woman? Like, if you were to go out, do you go out and buy yourself a new Patagonia jacket? Do you feel guilty thinking that money should be going back to the ranch? Or?
I do, but I always try to get it when it's on sale in Dillon.
Yeah, I grew up the same way. If I have to buy it on sale, I can never pay full price.
No.
I think that's just a product of the times when we grew up.
And the good thing about Patagonia is that I can wear it out there on the ranch, and when it wears out, I'll send it back in and they'll fix the zippers. They'll patch it up for me. Very few companies would do that.
I know.
So
I know.
I appreciate it.
I know, I do too. Do you guys, where are you at now with your ranching? Would you consider it to be sustainable? Are you doing sustainable ranching practices?
So my brother has the ranch now. Mm-hmm. I would say yes. He's very forward thinking, and so are my boys, who are ranching with their dad over at Harrison. You met them at the Rancher Roundtable the other night.
Yep.
Nick and Sam, and they're always trying new things. I think that's a product of hopefully how I raise them to think outside the box. And if there's a box, be careful, you'll fall through it.
Yeah.
But it makes it fun. And if it doesn't succeed, it's like my son said. It still can benefit that ground a few years later. Yeah.
Yeah, Nick was super cool to listen to him talk. So tell us a little bit about this process of, I drive by a field and I see cows eating grass and I think, well, look, that's nice, those cows are eating grass. And you don't think beyond that, but as a rancher who has to constantly be planning sometimes years in advance, what am I going to grow next to keep this soil alive? Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, around here, it's also, where am I going to move those cows next for this season? A lot of ranchers we have that forward thinking for the next few years, but usually we're not even aware of it. We're thinking about that season and then the very next year, how we're going to do that rotation so that we have forage when we need it and it's available, because with so much of it being tied to drought, with our rainfalls, we can get ourselves and our ground into, we don't treat it well a lot of times. We overuse it, and then they say it takes at least 3 years for every year of drought for it to come back if it's mismanaged.
Wow. Interesting. Things that like the folks like me don't ever have to think about,
But you do, because it's all tied to water, to runoff, to the health of our ecosystem, our valley, our waterways. It's all tied together.
yeah, this is one of the reasons why I love talking to you. Tell me a little bit more about that. Being a rancher, living in a valley where we all so what's the word I'm looking for? Fervently? Is that a word?
It is fervently believe that each one of us has got the best
Thank you.
aspirations.
Thank you very much. Yeah, let's talk about that for a sec.
So we've discussed this before, that each one of us thinks that somebody else isn't respecting it the way they should.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that we're looking at it from a different angle around the same situation. We all love what it provides, and we all use it. We just have to make sure that we take care of it and respect it and try to protect it. Just because you respect something doesn't mean that you're protecting it, because again, we're looking years down the road, and it's really easy to be short-sighted and go for a big dollar somewhere, and it can really skew what's happening for how this landscape manages itself and thrives or doesn't thrive.
Yep, or doesn't thrive. It's so key. We look at the Ranchlands Group, and you folks are, doing what you do with regards to land. And here at the Madison River Foundation, we do what we can do to conserve the watershed. And I know that the two of us, I'll speak for myself, I'm looking forward to, doing more collaborations.
I fervently agree too. I used that word again.
Yes. Pulling that one out of the archives. Fervently. What challenges do you see for ranchers in this valley or in Greater Montana? Like, what are you guys facing as challenges today, and what do you think needs to happen moving forward to, sort of sustain your lifestyle, if you will, at the same pace you're keeping it today?
I don't think we have a pace.
No, it changes year to year.
It does. And our lifestyles change so much, because we can start thinking that we deserve a new vehicle because our neighbor's got a new vehicle, or they've got a vacation, not just a vacation, but a really cool vacation. And ranching and ag hasn't been, if you're doing a good ranch job, usually you don't have those extra funds available because you're putting it back in. It's your investment. That's where that extra job in town gave people that spending money, which otherwise wasn't available.
Right.
I think the dollar is going to be calling to a lot of the younger generation as their parents, because they're going to have to be trying to either manage it between several family members, or else they'll sell and get the money and be able to do what each one of them want. But the conservation easements, when we talk about how much this land is valued at right now, that's good and bad, because now conservation easements really aren't a negative anymore. They used to be something that it was a donation and a tax write-off. Talking to real estate agents in the valley now, you will hear that conservation easement is not a negative for being able to sell a piece of property. It does not reduce the value.
But it does mean that property cannot be subdivided in many cases. Am I wrong?
Depending on how the conservation easement was set up, it could still have a certain number of housing sites, but it does protect it from just being, I'll use another old word, willy-nilly.
Willy-nilly.
Just chasing the dollar.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Tell me, what message do you have for our community today? What words of wisdom do you have for our Madison Valley community moving into 2025?
Being kind to each other, which also means being kind to ourselves, and it can be really hard. We were never taught to be that out here growing up in the ag community. You were supposed to, if you quit crying, I'll give you something to cry about.
Yep. I remember that one too.
Yep. Yeah. We can be and do what we want to do. And we find out that if we just take a breath and step back and remember that each one of us is not perfect, and that sadly includes ourselves, it gives us a little bit more grace to rub shoulders with each other when we're not used to rubbing shoulders.
Right. Yeah, as the ED of this foundation, I always think to myself when I go into a meeting, I don't care the things we disagree on in this valley, because that's an ocean of disagreements. I want to find those areas where we have symmetry and where we can find a neutral ground where we can agree, and those are also an ocean, but they're harder to see sometimes.
Sometimes our constituents think that we should only work with those that completely agree with us. But if we do, well, then we're all part of the same group. And it's not that old adage of the 80-20, where your bubbles, our circles of what we work on, if they overlap in 20%, then we're stronger there. And then each group interacts in a different 20%. But it interconnects us, and it gives each one of us strength as groups. But that 80-20 rule, we have fought with the ones that I call them close-minded. Maybe they're smart, but they say, well, they don't like this, they don't like that. And it's like, but we do agree here. And that's what's important.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially in a valley like ours, which is so small. We are so tight-knit, and we don't have the room or time to live in our disagreements. I don't believe. We can't.
But it gives people something to focus on.
It does. Well, I'm glad there's people out there like you who aren't focusing on it, and they're finding ways around those sharp corners.
I do focus on it, though, and I try to figure out how to get around it.
Yeah, well, that's what I appreciate about you.
Because we cannot ignore it, but it's stressful too, isn't it?
Yeah, can be.
Those preconceived ideas, trying to figure out how to break those barriers down. A lot of it's getting to visit with those people one-on-one and develop that relationship. Sometimes I don't know whose barriers are getting broke down, maybe just me.
Right? I know. How many times have you walked into a meeting with your preconceived notions to walk out of there and be like, ooh, that was a surprise. Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. It happens to me a bunch too.
I was amazed that you and Wendy, I could see that you were really soaking that in the other night about the soil nutrients and all. Just the fascination. I thought, we're going to bore them to death. But, it's not boring if you can grasp just a bit of it.
Yeah.
The nuances are everywhere.
I know. I wasn't expecting that at all. We're talking about the Ranchers Roundtable, folks, that happened the other night at the library. And I wasn't expected to be moved as much as I was. I had a peek behind the curtain of a rancher's life, and that was pretty cool. All right. That's about all we have time for today. Anything you want to wrap with?
How long are you sticking around?
Me?
Yes.
In this room? On this earth?
In this position, because you have done really good things for the River Foundation.
Oh, thank you very much.
And you're helping knit this community back together. I say back together, it had a lot of holes. You wouldn't want to wear it as a coat. The wind would blow through it, but it needs some mending. We need to remember we're all partners in this.
Absolutely.
But we can build something new and something strong because we also have new people here
Mm-hmm.
and new ideas. And our agencies, I think, are working better together. And we have funding available to help protect this and what we all love here.
Yeah. Yep.
And growth isn't the worst thing around, even though everybody says so. When you look back through history with the gold rush and everything, we had more people, but they did a lot of damage. We just have to remember to try to do it well.
Yeah. Yeah. What do they call it? Growth with intention.
It doesn't mean it doesn't hurt.
Right. Right. But if we close our eyes to it and say, well, I don't want it to happen, then it's going to happen, as you said, willy-nilly. But if we can actually guide that growth, we can create something pretty cool.
And it'll make it more tolerable for all of us and our pocketbooks, because when it's willy-nilly, it costs a whole lot more to operate this county.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, on that, we'll wrap it up.
All right.
Another episode.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving. Thanks for being here.